In this video, we're going to talk about writing and solving equations from word problems. So in order to save time and to deal with the issue that I think most of you really have trouble with, we're going to do just a portion of this process. So remember, when you're working word problems in Math 60, we want to use the process from Module 1, which says choose a letter to represent the variable quantity and define it. Then translate the sentence into an equation. Then solve the problem using the process, showing the process. That just means solve your equation, showing the steps to solve it. Then check the solution using the usual method of taking your answer and substituting it back into your equation to see if it really works. And then write the answer in a sentence. So in this video, we're just going to concentrate on these top two: choose a letter to represent the variable quantity and define it, and translate the sentence into an equation, because those are the two that I see people have the most trouble with. So you notice that your book has several different tips that we've talked about solving certain problems. Remember that these tips are just that. They're tips. We're not telling you how to do this. We're showing you various techniques that those of us who are good at solving word problems use, and you choose which ones work for you. We want you to know about these various approaches. So with this problem in front of us here, we're going to use the tip visualize the problem. The problem says Jake bent a 32 centimeter length of wire into the shape of a rectangle. The width of the rectangle he made is 2 centimeters shorter than its length. What is the length of the wire rectangle? So I'm going to just lead you through the way I think through a problem like this, and hopefully that'll help you learn how to solve things like this. As we've said in class, this learning to solve word problems is a process. Like anything that you find difficult, you don't expect to find some secret to it. You don't expect to get good at it quickly. You expect to learn it gradually over time. Think back on anything difficult you've ever done. That's the way it works. You learn it in little bits and pieces. You get a little better and a little better, and you ask for lots of help along the way. So that's the way I want you to approach these too. So the first thing I do when I solve a word problem is I look for what is it that I'm trying to find. So I want the length of the wire rectangle. So if I go back to the whole thing, I have this length of wire that I'm shaping into a rectangle. So the reason we're using visualize the problem on this one is that it just naturally lends itself to that, because it's a physical object that we're talking about, so it makes sense to picture it. And I'm going to think of it this way. I take this piece of wire and I start laying it out, and then I bend it, and I bend it again, and I bend it again, and I'm going to leave that little gap there, even though there shouldn't be a gap. But that's just to remind me that I started out with a length of wire and I bent it into a rectangle. So we look for some hints in here, because once you've drawn a picture, you want to label it. And you can label these things any way that makes the most sense to you. What makes sense to me is to start by assigning a variable. So for me, when I look at the question, what is the length of the wire rectangle, that's where I'm going to assign my variable. So I'm going to say L equals the length of the rectangle. And then I'm going to go right over and put that on my drawing. So then if it's a rectangle, I also need to know the width, and it says right here the width of the rectangle he made is 2 centimeters shorter than its length. So that means this is going to be the length minus 2. And this is also going to be the length minus 2. Then I also know that he used a 32 centimeter length of wire to make the thing. So that means that this whole thing all the way around is 32 centimeters. And this is what I'm explaining to you is literally how I think through a problem like this. So it's the order that I think of it in. And so now I feel like I have enough information to write an equation for the situation. So if we bend a length of wire into the shape of a rectangle, we're really dealing with the perimeter of the rectangle. So I know that the perimeter of a rectangle is equal to 2 times its length plus 2 times its width. Or you could think of it as just adding all the sides together too. That would also work. So in this case, my perimeter is 32. And I'm going to say 2 times my length. Well, my length, let me redo that. My length, I really am using L as my variable, so I'm going to leave that like that. And then here, I didn't use W as a variable. I figured out that the width of my rectangle was L minus 2, so I'm putting that in instead of W. And that is my equation. That's what we're asking for when we ask for an equation that represents this situation. Now, earlier videos on this section, we talked about how to solve an equation like that. So when you get to the next steps where you solve the equation, you're going to use the distributive property, you're going to combine like terms on the right side of this equation. But for right now, I just want you to think about how we got to the equation itself.